welcome to GESS Dubai. We're thrilled to have you here. Perhaps you could tell me a bit about your talk. I think you're talking about the convergence of VR and AI and what impact that's having on society.
Okay, happy to do so, and it's wonderful to be here. I think that one of the things that we get caught up in when new technology comes along is that we tend to see it as a solitary item or object, and what we really need to do is to think about how VR or XR, whatever you want to call it, is going to converge with a number of additional technologies, particularly artificial intelligence. When you look, for example, at our smartphone, it's not a single technology, it's a whole convergence of different technologies, display technologies, processor, audio, all sorts of stuff that came together that creates the device that we use. In the same kind of way, early VR right now is pretty much just VR. But what we're starting to move into is this era of having AI-generated avatars, and that's going to become very much part of our virtual experiences. So what I'm trying to get at in the talk is to have us begin thinking about this, to think about the opportunities, because there are incredible opportunities here of having virtual avatars, particularly ones that are AI-driven, for learning, for the workplace, but there's also going to be challenges that are going to come up in this.
I mean, it sounds like a really interesting, innovative technology, but I'm guessing with sort of the advancements of that, there are some challenges and drawbacks to having that technology in the classroom and sort of in society.
Oh, there definitely are, and I think, you know, as I think through this and the kinds of experiences that I've been through, I get really concerned about it because I see what's happening in social media right now with fake news and social bots that, you know, can even end up shaping elections perhaps, or, you know, and also just having impact on other people in society. And if we're already having issues with social media, what kind of issues are we going to have when we have virtual experiences that are fabricated, that are not real? And are we going to be able to tell those apart? Can we read those experiences and say, this one's an authentic experience, this one is a fabricated experience? Because we're going to end up at a point somewhere down the road, Michael Madry has said this in talking about virtual reality, that anyone will be able to create any avatar of any person alive today or who has ever lived and have them say or do whatever they want. And that's just, you know, it's a mind-boggling thought. I mean, because what it means, first of all, of course, the good side of this is that we'll be able to bring back to life historical figures. We'll be able to, you know, create tutors that can help students along. But it also means that there's going to be bad actors out there that are going to say, let me create something that's a total fabrication because this is my view of history. And then how are we going to sort through all that and say, this is an accurate representation, this one is not? You know, we have enough trouble right now reading books in terms of, you know, sort of having an understanding in terms of digital literacy. We're going to reach a point where we really need a kind of experiential literacy or experiential fluency, and I don't think we're teaching that. And that's sort of, I think that's really what I want people to begin thinking about, because it's not really here now. Most of our VR experiences are pretty straightforward. You put on a headset, you go through an experience, but the really cutting edge ones, I've seen some of them, and they're coming, and they're going to be in our midst soon enough within the next couple of years, and we want to be prepared for this, so we need to start having that dialogue now instead of waiting until it happens and trying to catch up.
And I guess as well, one of the challenges, particularly for teachers, is how quickly the technology is advancing and how they adapt and change their teaching to accommodate that within the classroom, but also to keep up with students and what they know as well.
And I think that's a huge challenge, and one of the remarkable aspects, I think, of being here in Dubai in the UAE is that there is this real commitment to innovation, this embrace of emerging technologies, which I think countries and cultures like that will begin to address this. My fear is in other countries, and even including in the United States, where there's a great deal of regulation of education, and people tend to be very static. There are tons of innovators, tons of people doing amazingly wonderful things in the States and in other countries, but there's also people that are just going, I can't move because I have too many people telling me that I have to meet certain standards, and those standards were designed for another era, not designed for the world that we're entering into now.
And I guess that crosses across as well to sort of the jobs that are going to happen in the future and how you train students and kids for jobs that we don't know how to exist. And obviously emerging technology plays a big part in that, and we don't know what that will look like, but it's more perhaps focusing on some of the other skills around that as well, the more transferable skills.
Oh, I think absolutely. And, one of the amazing things about virtual reality is that you can put somebody anywhere into any kind of environment. And, I was recently at a school system in North Carolina in the States, and they were talking about how they wanted to it's an area where there's a tremendous number of high-tech factories, but they can't take the students there to visit, because obviously it's not like days gone by. It's difficult to do the transportation. The factories are too safety conscious to have 20, 30 students walking around in them. So they're trying to explain to students the kinds of things that they could be working on, whether it's building jet engines or high-tech equipment, but it just kind of falls flat if they're talking about it. And, they were buying a large number of VR headsets, and they want to be able to develop experiences so that students can see what these jobs are and see the kind of careers that are there, because they're actually very good careers and the kind of things that really that they could pursue, but they need to have an introduction to it. And that was the idea, is that they'd be able to step onto the factory floor virtually and get a sense of what it might be like to work in this place, which is actually right down the street from them, but they're never going to get in the door otherwise, without that. So yeah, I think in terms of job skills, it's absolutely amazing. And of course the other thing is that we're trying to teach students or give them the skills for a future where we're not even sure what kind of skills or jobs, what kind of skills they need or jobs they will have, because you have all these new jobs coming onto the market. So what they really need is, I think, the most fundamental skill is that skill to be able to adapt, to be innovative, to say, I'm going to learn something new, that even though I'm out of school, I'm still learning, because we're no longer in an era as we were in the past where you could go to school, you could get a degree and go, that's it, I'm set, I'm okay. I have my degree, now I can just go work. You're going to have to keep doing lifelong learning the whole way through.
And you're talking, I think, a lot about some of the things you chatted about through with me in your keynote, which is on Wednesday at 12:30. What would you hope would be one of the key takeaways that the audience took from your talk?
Oh, it's a good question. Yeah, I know, a lot of things. First of all, to understand that wherever we are right now and whatever the limitations of the technology, it is changing so rapidly that we need to judge it not by where it is, by where it's going to be. This wonderful thing, Canadian hockey player Wayne Gretzky, who was one of the great, I'm not a follower of hockey, but it was still one of the great remarks of all time, where people asked him, they said, why are you so good at playing hockey? And he said, because I never followed the puck. I always skate to where the puck is going to end up. And he did have that kind of uncanny sense when he was out on the ice rink of not following the puck around. In the same kind of way, we need to do that with technology, because when we look at VR headsets right now, honestly, even the more advanced ones are kind of like the very early portable phones, so-called mobile phones that were almost shoebox size, that you had this huge device and you put it in the car. You could, barely use it maybe for a few minutes, then you had to recharge it again. And, even though the technology is mind-boggling in some ways and completely eye-opening, we have to realize that we're only at the most rudimentary stages. One thing my co-founder at MyJajiva and I always like to talk about digital bodies. We do workshops, is that we're at the point where the Lumiere brothers were when cinema was first developing, or Georges Méliès, at the very beginning of this whole new, it's not even a media form, but this whole new experiential form that this media will provide us. And as we enter into this, first of all, there's all sorts of ways that can go. We don't really have a language for it. And, it's going to end up being very different than it is now, which is all the more reason that people need to embrace it. They need to experiment with it and give it to the students. Let students get their hands on it, because in some ways students are best about this. We all come from what you call a baseline point in technology. We all can remember back to the first technology device we ever had, and the more gray hair we have, I guess, the more we can go further back and say, oh, there was a PC or something like that. But the point is that for our students growing up today, their baseline technology is the smartphone. That's what they're starting with. And they're going to move on from that. And so it's so important that that this technology is in their hands. Because first of all, they're very creative with it. They would do things with it that we would not imagine. And what we can do is we can help them develop the vocabulary and the skills and the ethical standards they need so that when they do go out and have to confront issues that we probably can't even imagine or choices that we can't even imagine, they'll be ready to make those decisions in the right way for society and for themselves.